Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the seminar series here on the Middle East seminar series here at SAIS Europe. I'm Rafaela Lissarto. I'm Associate Professor of Middle East Studies here at SAIS Europe. And it's my great pleasure to welcome our speaker tonight, Professor Menachem Klein. He's a faculty member in the Department of Political Science at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. He is also a fellow at the Bruno Kreisky Forum for International Dialogue. He is a board member of the Palestine-Israel Journal, and he was previously also a board member of B'Tselem, which is the most important human rights organization in Israel. Professor Klein has studied Middle East studies and Islamic studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He was repeatedly twice a fellow at St. Antony's College at the University of Oxford. He was also a visiting professor at MIT and a Fernand Braudel fellow at the European University Institute. He had also visiting scholarships at Leiden University, and in 2015 he was a visiting fellow at King's College in London. Besides his academic achievements, he was also an advisor for Jerusalem Affairs and Final Status talks for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the final status negotiations between Israel and the PLO, serving Shlomo Ben Ami. And he was also a member of the advisory team that operated in the office of former Prime Minister Ehud Barak. And since 1996, he has been involved in many unofficial negotiations with the Palestinians, between Israel and the Palestinians. And probably the most important one is the Geneva Initiative, in which he was involved, which was then led to an agreement signed between basically civil society representatives and supported by the Swiss government. He is a prolific writer. He has written a book called Lives in Common, Arabs and Jews in Jerusalem, Jaffa and Hebron with Oxford University Press and Hearst. And that book was awarded by the New Republic. It was awarded the Best Non-Fiction Book Award in 2014. In the past, he has also published a book that I personally like very much. It's called The Shift, Israel-Palestine from Border Conflict to Ethnic Struggle. He has written Jerusalem, the Contested City, and the Jerusalem problem, the struggle for permanent status, and also a possible peace between Israel and Palestine, and inside his account of the Geneva Initiative. His latest book is called Arafat and Abbas, Portraits of Leadership in a State Postponed. That was published last year, if I'm not mistaken. It is a wonderful book, and here we also have the cover. Yes, fantastic. And so Professor Klein will talk about this book and in a seminar form, and you're all welcome to comment and ask questions. Please use the for the online participants. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions or comments. So very happy to welcome you, although not in person in Bologna, which would obviously have been much nicer. So please, Menachem Klein, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rafaela, for initiating this seminar. And I hope we can follow in Bologna, seeing the participants face to face and having an interaction during the coffee time and before and after is part of the webinar, which unfortunately we cannot make it, so we will complete it sometime later. I would also be very happy to participate in Bologna. I'm happy to participate from distance. Bologna is the first university. So it's a great honor for me to participate in the seminar, to be invited to participate in a university located in Bologna, where the first modern university in Europe, the Western world, opened. I would like to say what the book is all about, and then move to describe few differences between Arafat and Abbas. And first of all, about the subject. I don't know, for me to acknowledge that a generation passed since the signing of Oslo Agreement, September 93, it was very hard to acknowledge, to admit that a generation passed, more than 25 years. And then I decided to look back and to see which kind of leadership the Palestinian national movement developed during this Oslo period. So this is the story behind writing or summing up the two leaders of the Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinian Authority is the Oslo Agreement child, I would say. There are other fathers and mothers to this newborn or new form of the Palestinian national leadership. The Intifada, of course, is one of them, the first Intifada, Madrid Conference in 91, of course. But let's, okay, so let's see what is in the book. The first chapter, I describe the personalities. I compare both leaders' personalities, their way to power, and how they work. What are their working habits and the profile. The whole book is about profile of two leaders. The second book is, the second chapter is about their foreign policy. The third chapter is about domestic policy. And then the fourth chapter is about the PA succession struggle to who are or which are the models that compete or patterns that compete to succeed Mahmoud Abbas, including Hamas. Hamas, I discuss Hamas in this chapter as a pattern or model of succeeding Abbas. I say model, I say pattern, not because I'm prevented to write names. I mention names, but in my view, not the name is important as the type of leader, which type of leader will succeed Abbas and lead the Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority ahead. So the type is more important than the person, him or herself. So this is the book all about. I concluded the book with the eve of President Trump peace plan publication. Nothing substantial changed since then, and I doubt if under Biden anything will happen. But let's see. Now, a few words about the Palestinian National Movement leadership. First of all, about the national movement. The national movement as a movement was established after World War I. But Palestinian nationalism, or what we call patriotism, wataniya, attachment to the territory of Palestine, was there already since the end of 19th century. I deal with this in my book, Lives in Common, and I hope I show it very clearly, that Palestinian patriotism, attachment to the land, to the center of the area that we know now as Palestine, including the state of Israel, was there since the late 19th century, and it was formed up as a national movement when the Ottomans were defeated and Britain occupied the area and established the mandatory Palestine administration. Now, the Palestinian national movement during the British mandatory period was led by a very conservative elite. The well-known leader was Haj Amin al-Husseini. So the big families, the big clans ruled the national movement in very, very conservative way. So it was not a modern national movement. It was a struggle between elite powers, sometimes clan, based on clan and kinship political parties, but it was, I hesitate to say it was a modern national movement. It was perhaps semi-national, modern national movement, national and modern political parties. But with the defeat, with the Nakba, with the defeat in '48, the whole conservative, old leadership disappeared, totally disappeared. And therefore, a new leaders could come in and fill the vacuum. And here comes Arafat and Abbas. So unlike the previous leadership of the Husseinis and let's say the families of Husseini, Dajani, Nashashibi, all of them, and the Nusayba, going back in history to the 7th century, or to Salahuddin fighters that conquered Palestine, the old elite, very well based in Palestine, wealthy, ruling religious institutions, having many lands, and they are landlords and so on. The 48 that defeat, the Nakba, that created refugeehood, and in the Nakba, half of the Palestinian population became refugee, and most of the locations, the rural places were destroyed, occupied, and became refugees all over the Middle East, and even sometimes outside it. So the whole social structure, the Palestinian social structure, collapsed. And here came, and the Fatah was established. Here comes the new elite, the PLO elite. But before before becoming a PLO elite, the Fatah was established in the late 50s by a group of 10 people, among them Arafat and Abbas, about 10 people who offered a very, very different agenda for the Palestinian national movement. And it's interesting to see what they offered in the 50s and the 60s, and looking also and what remain today from what they offered or introduced to the national movement in the 50s and the 60s. So Fatah was established then. Fatah was not part of the PLO up to 1968, post the Six-Day War, the defeat of the Arab countries. Then Fatah entered into the PLO and took over actually the PLO and changed the PLO along Fatah ideology. Much of Fatah ideology was based on the Algerian struggle for liberation from the French colonialism and occupation. So there were three pillars that Fatah argued in favor of or introduced to the Palestinian nationalism and to the Palestinian people. First, revolution. Second, liberation. And third, self-reliance. All the three are interrelated. Revolution means that we will change our destiny from being occupied and passive. We will make a revolution in order to liberate ourselves, to achieve self-determination, and we will make it by relying on ourselves, not rely on Arab countries. This was the big change that Fatah offered against the consensus that the Palestinians should wait till the Arab countries liberate them from, or liberate for them, Palestine. So this is the big new idea that they introduced, and up to date you can see in Fatah writing, "Revolution till victory" is the slogan that Fatah used up to date. Now look at account from today's perspective, looking back, revolution, we don't see any revolution here. I don't think that in the PA reality there is much of revolution. Liberation, very limited, if at all. There is a consensus that Israel occupation today is worse than it was before the Palestinian Authority established. And self-reliance is also a myth, because Abbas today look desperately, I would say, to the United States and Europe to liberate him, his people, from Israeli occupation and the expansion of settlements. So self-reliance, not much is there, remained. Liberation looks very, very far, if at all. People are desperate in Palestine today. And revolution is just a hope. Arafat became Arafat was not the natural leader of the PLO, neither of Fatah. He among the founders of Fatah, he was the less qualified. Let's be honest. He was less qualified. But he was the only one that agreed to work 24/7 for the purpose of Fatah. So he was there. He devoted himself to the job. So he became a leader, but at first he was totally unknown. Even after '67 war, he entered the occupied territories, the West Bank. Nobody knew him. And he has to run away from the Israeli security services that tried to catch him, to arrest him. Luckily, he escaped back to Jordan with total failure to establish in the West Bank bases for Fatah. Nobody knew him because he was not born in Palestine. He was born in Egypt, in Cairo. His father family, after his mother died, his father moved to Cairo. nobody knew him. He is from lower middle classes, so he was not a big name. Abbas, on the other hand, was born in Safad, in Tzfat in Hebrew, in Palestine, and became a refugee in Damascus. So he was not part of the elite, unknown to many. He was among the father founders of Fatah, but most of the time he did not work for the movement, for Fatah movement. He made money for being export-import to the Gulf countries after studying in Beirut, import-export of electronics to Qatar, and many others the same. What made Arafat a leader was that he created a myth. A myth that he embodies the nation, the movement, the will to be free. He built himself as an icon of the nation, icon of liberation, icon of struggle. So in his speeches, he used to speak about sacrification, about war, about liberation, about jihad, meaning national struggle for liberation. And he built himself as he identified himself with the national aspiration, with the national wishes. And he survived several trials, Israeli trials, to kill him, even before the 82 war in Lebanon. So recently, some intelligence information was released about trials, but he survived. He survived all of them, and he used this attempts to kill him as a symbol that is the outside powers, first and foremost Israel, but also the West, try to kill, to end the Palestinian national movement. And he survived all of them. One of them was not done by anybody, a crash, airplane crash, that he also survived. So the way that he wore his kafia on the head, he said it's like Palestine. He was always in a khaki suit with a pistol most of the time. So the image of him was as a fighter struggling for liberation. The PLO moved towards politics after in the 80s actually, but the first attempt to make it, to move to politics and to move towards the United States was done secretly in the late 70s. When Carter entered the White House, Arafat sent an appeal to Brzezinski asking to open direct contacts with the new administration. It was following a Carter campaign in which he declared or argued for recognizing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. So he hoped that Carter will be very responsive and approve talks with the PLO. It did not happen, of course. Then came the Israeli-Egypt agreement, and to which the PLO was not part of. It was unilateral peace agreement. But later on, it came. So the Palestinians moved slowly towards politics, leaving behind armed struggle first as a second best to political struggle, and then pushed away in favor of political struggle, only for international politics. And also the Intifada. The first Intifada, the uprising, was a watershed that brought the PLO to acknowledge that armed struggle is useless. Why should we continue to enter to Israel from Lebanon or from Jordan or from Egypt at a time when our people in the West Bank struggle directly against occupation through the Intifada? There is an uprising in the territory. We don't need to enter from the outside, and they make it under the Palestinian flag, and they claim that we, the PLO, are PLO seniors. We are their leaders. So the armed struggle declined at that time as a principle. Here and there were individuals, of course, or groups within opposition groups, but generally speaking, within the PLO, it was very, very marginal, and with the push of leaders, political leaders in the West Bank, and including East Jerusalem, they moved ahead and participated, PLO, informally in the Madrid Peace Conference of Madrid in 91, which opened the door to the secret talks that led to Oslo. The Palestinian Authority was established formally in June 94. Arafat was far from, I would say, not far from being as a big thinker or strategist. He used tactics, sometimes, very stupid tactics that you cannot find even, and many leaders do not use them, do not play such cheap political games. He was unreliable. Everybody knew that, including his comrades in Fatah. They mistrust him and so on. But since he became a mythological leader, not due to the myth, to the identifying himself and his sacrificing his private life for the Palestinian cause, so there was no alternative to Arafat at that time, and they said, okay, this is the person, here are his disqualifications, and we will try to manage. Abbas could not work with Arafat. Abbas is very different. Abbas has no tactical qualities at all. He is in favor of strategy, but only one strategy. Abbas never had or developed plan B. You cannot find in Abbas double talk. Arafat, double and quarter and triple talks, no problem. Abbas is straightforward, stick to what he decided and refuse to move. And so Abbas is very, very reliable, but not flexible. not at all. Arafat was not a great orator, but he could light the public when he spoke to, because of this kind of mythological person and the symbol of the struggle. And also because he maintained contacts with many, many people out there in Palestine. When he was in Tunis after '82 war, when he and the PLO expelled by Israel international community in Arab countries, forced him to leave Beirut and move the PLO headquarters to Tunis. He maintained phone calls, contact with persons, with institutions, got requests and so on. And the same happened when he was in Beirut, as the same. Abbas, on the contrary, has no direct personal relations with his people. Not at all. He is closed in the Muqatta, in the headquarters, in the presidency headquarters, and at home, and hate to speak to the public. And he is a very, very bad speaker. He's a boring speaker, to say the truth. I watched his speech in Palestinian TV, in the formal big meetings of the PLC, Palestinian Legislative Council, or the Palestinian National Council. Very dry and quite boring. And sometimes his aides try to organize, a meeting in his headquarters to meet many people. Very few showed up, and it was pity to see him. So they are very, very different in personalities. Both changed, I must say. Arafat changed from a person who believed in armed struggle as the only way to liberate Palestine to a leader that rely on politics instead of the pistol or the gun or the armed struggle. He was disappointed, definitely. He believed that Oslo Agreement will lead automatically to liberation. The same Abbas also believed. We all Oslo supporters also believe that it will lead automatically to Palestinian state on the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Abbas changed his mind after the USSR dissolvement. He is described as the person that all the time maintained contacts with Israelis and so on. This is not the case. Others in Fatah, I would say, in the 70s, late 70s and 80s, maintained contacts with Israeli peaceniks. Issam Sartawi, for instance, one of them. They got the blessing of Arafat, the okay of Arafat, to contact Israelis. Abbas was not part of these contacts at all. He was not. He wrote his PhD in the 80s, early 80s, in Moscow on Israel and the Holocaust and Zionism, typical Soviet, pro-Soviet dissertation in the line of along the party line, far from really knowing Israel and what it is. But he moved when the Soviet Union collapsed, and he acknowledged that he must move to or change his mind and hopes towards the West, and gradually he became part of the secret talks that led to Oslo. So he was not, pro-Israeli or pro-Zionist or in favor of maintaining contacts with Israel all the time. He was not active in this. Now he stick to the cooperation with the Israeli government, not only security, but also in other fields. I don't know what Arafat would have done today, okay, if he remained in power. Okay, but I would like to say this regarding Abbas. For Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, or maintaining the Palestinian Authority with the very, very limited power that it has, is a must. For him, this is the nuclear reactor, I would say, for independent state. So he wants to keep it at all cost. The PA is not. It does not consider seriously dissolving the PA. It comes as a threat to Israel. We will dissolve the PA. We will dissolve. We will ask you to take direct occupation and management of our people and so on. Abbas does not want it. Abbas sees this as the only hope to move ahead towards an independent Palestinian state. He doesn't want the occupation, the direct occupation, to come back. And this explains why he refuses to dissolve the PA, why he resumed the coordination with Israel, although it was not stopped totally. Only the parts of the civil and security coordination was stopped, and now we gave up and continue. Of course, we have the issue that the salaries that the Palestinian Authority provides, livelihood and wages to about 1.5 million people that are dependent in the income, and the Palestinian Authority has no budget except donations from different sources, mainly Europe, and the taxes that Israel collect and transfer, taxes that Israel collect in Israel, paid by the Palestinians who work or import through Israeli ports, and Israel deliver or transfer these taxes to the PA. So fully dependent on Israel, but he does not want to give up. What will happen when this old leader will leave? Nobody knows. And finally, both of them created a system of patronage, that the system, both under Arafat and under Abbas, everybody is dependent on the leader. Even Abbas, that has a perception of a moderate person, is very tough. He kicks out of office anyone who seems to be or considered by Abbas as an opposition, different voice, has the guts to argue with Abbas or challenge him or to offer something that Abbas refuses even to consider. He's very tough, leader domestically in the party. Both Arafat and Abbas created a system that everybody depends on the leader, even to stay in office. But he trusts, Abbas trust very, very few people, very few. Arafat was more large. He liked to work with many people. He allocated the same mission to different people. And took authorities from one, gave it to the other, and then took this authority from the other and gave back to the first one, and played with his assistant or with cabinet members or Fatah seniors and his aides. Both Arafat and Abbas are very, very bad managers. Very bad managers. The management in the PA is catastrophe, and there are no rules, the working rules, and these are not respected. And I don't speak about corruption, okay, which is well known to the donors, to the donor countries. Although I would like to say, as an Israeli, I would like to say that not only Palestinian leaders are corrupted, I would like to say. So it's not, I don't say it, to save Israel or Israeli leaders, to say, oh, they are a bit better, we are fine, and okay. Maybe that the Israeli leaders are even worse. It will be very interesting to compare. And Abbas has no charisma whatsoever, I said. But unlike Arafat, who was not the charismatic leader, Abbas could not build up a myth, could not play a role, become the symbol of the Palestinian Authority or the Palestinian institution building, and so on. They are he is a very bad institution builder. Even when there was Salam Fayyad as a prime minister under Abbas and started building institutions, the competition between the two brought Abbas to kick out Salam Fayyad from office. He saw that Salam Fayyad is getting more public support and build his own power base, so he decided to get rid of him. So this is the situation in very few words. One thing I must say, that for the record of Abbas, from the very first moment when Abbas acknowledged that Netanyahu and Trump tailored together what later became the peace plan, Trump plan, he worked hard to stop the plan from taking off. Actually succeeded for about 2 or 3 years to delay the publication of the plan. He succeeded in a very big campaign. He succeeded to mobilize Muslim leaders, Arab and Muslim leaders, against the United States moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He he convinced the King Khaled to support him, King Abdullah, against the American president and against MBS in Saudi Arabia. So his foreign policy, this is his big achievement. So when the peace plan, Trump plan, was published, the ground was ready to reject it. Nowadays, he faces the real problem with the Abrahamic agreement, accords, the peace agreements between Israel and the Gulf states, and the Palestinian leadership is paralyzed at the moment. They hope that Biden will make some changes, and perhaps they are super optimistic. Maybe I see some signs that they are super optimistic on what Biden will do, can do, and will do, and wish to do. So we will see. But the Abrahamic Accords shocked the Palestinian leadership, actually. So okay, now let's open it. What's the time? Okay, let's open the floor for questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Menachem. It was a very, very interesting, fascinating presentation. And as I said, I mean, I think the book is also very, very fascinating. So for the participants, please use the Q&A function. And for those here present, please raise your hand. I have at least 3 questions, but I will not go first. So Sarah, please.
Thank you so much for your interesting presentation. And I have a question. And would you see any potential alternative leader for the Palestinian resistance at the moment? And if such an alternative leader exists, would it make any difference and actually achieve the creation of a Palestinian state? Or is the power asymmetry too strong and the Israeli leadership too unwilling to end the occupation? Thank you.
Okay, the asymmetry is given. The asymmetry will stay even when a Palestinian state established. It will. The gap is too big in order to jump over, to close it in one jump, and I doubt if it can be closed now in one generation even. It's not only the size that Oslo Agreement or the Arab Peace Plan allocates to the Palestinian state, 22% of historic Palestine, but also in the income per capita, modern economy, strong army, high tech, and so on and so forth. The Palestinian state will start from scratch, actually. Yeah, because the Israeli occupation is working very, very hard not to let the Palestinians develop almost anything. They are fully dependent in incomes from Israel, they work from Israel, export, import, everything. So of course, there can be equality in international status. Once there is a Palestinian state recognized and full member in the UN and in the international relations, it's a kind of symmetric status internationally, legally, with Israel. In this, I can see we can start. Actually, I would like to see it happen today, tomorrow. Why to start negotiations with this huge gap? Let's start it in more equal. I think that recognizing the state of Palestine before negotiations will help the negotiations. Maybe it will help the Israeli side not to impose its power and to create a fully dependent Palestinian state, dependent on Israel, and continue the occupation by other means. This is not a peace agreement, so a real peace agreement. So maybe the way ahead is to recognize the state of Palestine at the first step immediately. I also argue, unlike what I supported during Oslo early years, to start with Jerusalem and refugees, to start with the most difficult issues, not to postpone them till we solve what seems to be less heavy problems or burden or obstacle, like settlements or sovereignty and so on. Let's start with the really hardcore issues. I think that this will help the negotiation to end successfully, unlike Oslo, opposite to Oslo. The Oslo, the discussion started with sovereignty, security, borders, settlements, and they had many problems with Jerusalem and refugees. And so the idea to start with the problematic issues first.
Thank you. Please use the Q&A function if you want to ask questions, and not the chat, because it's a bit more easy to deal with. So I'll ask a question quickly.
No, I see here in the chat.
Yes, there is a chat, but I actually asked to use the Q&A function.
Ah, okay.
Because otherwise we have it on the screen and then it becomes complicated. So in the meantime, while Daisuke rewrites the question into the Q&A, I just used the opportunity and ask one of the questions I had. One question I had actually was, what would Arafat have done today? But you already said that you don't know, right? You already answered that. But I was just wondering, I mean, if you look at these two leaders and these two types of leaders, Arafat certainly managed to put the Palestinian question on the map, right? That was his biggest achievement. But then both he and also Abbas, in a way, failed in the objective to establish a state. So it's basically a failed leadership in a way, and they're both so different. So how much of it is really a structural condition? I mean, how much is it possible to establish a state, a Palestinian state, in this context and with the structural conditions that obviously are characterized by Israel's rule over the territories? And perhaps related to that, perhaps half a question that is related to that, I think it's very interesting that you talked about both leaders having this patronage system, corruption, and as we all know, donors know about it, but when Arafat and the PLO came back to, well, the Gaza Strip, to the territories and established the Palestinian Authority, that was something that, I mean, I remember it from donors saying that off the record, saying, well, we close an eye there because these guys they don't have a base, they don't have a local base, so they need to build their base, and it's okay to be a bit large on the issue of, you call it corruption, we call it family relations type of dealings, right? But what I think is even more interesting that when we look at the Palestinian Authority today, there has clearly been a development towards authoritarianism, which, also Arafat was not exactly the big Democrat. And again, how much does this have to do with structural conditions? And you also mentioned in the book that today the Palestinian Authority is very much comparable with neighboring states, neighboring Arab states, the way that politics are managed, right? So yeah, so that's basically my double question.
Yes. Okay, the main catalysator for Palestinian liberation was the first Intifada. The first Intifada achieved much more than the armed struggle. Let's face it. The armed struggle brought the Palestinian problem or the Palestinian aspiration to be acknowledged, to be recognized, but it did not achieve so much politically as the first Intifada that led to Madrid, and led to Oslo. Second, no, I will continue. If there would be a third Intifada, not in individuals stabbing Jews, Israelis, but non-violent mass movement protest against the Israeli occupation, this can change the game. The masses, as it happened at the first stage of the first Intifada. It has its own power, and it can bridge the imbalance between the strong this Israeli state and the poor Palestinian people. Now, let's be very realistic. The state of Palestine that will be established will be an Arab state, a typical Arab third world state. By its lack of infrastructure, incomes, and so on, goodwill, qualified people, yes. Institutions, very limited. Experience in management, very limited. To a kind of local municipalities or regional institutions, but not running state or semi-state even. So it will take the state of Palestine some time to learn, and they will fail many times till they will learn how to walk, will build institutions on a solid base. Authoritarian leadership, definitely, but it's typical to the neighborhood. So we don't expect them to be, West Germany or UK government. It's not realistic. Corruption is part of, I said, even Israel is not free from, Israeli politics is not free from corruption, neither not from authoritarian tendencies, okay, in Israel. And also Europe, we can see it, few countries also in Europe. And so on. So this are not arguments against not letting the Palestinians establish their state or preventing them exercise their right of self-determination. But actually, it will be a very weak state, dependent much on external donations, funds, or tourists, and so on. It will take time to Palestine to build its infrastructure and so on. Why I see here the question, could you please elaborate your remarks stating that both leaders are not good at management?
Yes.
Okay, I will elaborate.
That was the question, the next question that I would have raised, which is by one of our students here.
Yes, a very good question. See, the PLO claimed to be a state, but it was not a state, it was an organization. The executive committee of the PLO said, we are the government of Palestine, but they did not govern over territory and people. At most, they govern over an organization, an umbrella organization. PLO was an umbrella organization, a union of autonomous, independent, autonomous organization, different organizations. And the PLO, at most, was the coordinator between different groups with different ideologies, clashing ideologies, I would say. So the PLO leadership, classical leadership, has no experience in running a state machine, even less than what we call the Yishuv or the Zionist movement had in Palestine and the pre-statehood under the British mandate. Under the British mandate, the Zionist movement ruled over its people in the territory, in Palestine. The PLO did not rule its people in Palestine. What Oslo made, Oslo brought this leadership inside and gave this leadership a very, very limited authority. It's a kind of, I would say, regional autonomy, but that's it. So modern machinery is lacking. They run health institutions that were there in the territory prior to the Palestinian Authority, developed under the Israeli occupation, starting also in Jordanian times. But it's far from running a state and having an experience how to rule over the people and the area. So this is one. In this context, the management, for instance, Arafat, let's say, bringing Max Weber to Tunis to see how Arafat runs, he will just make it, well, in the first 2 hours, he will take the first airplane back to Germany. That's totally desperate. If you take, for instance, if you could have come to Arafat bureau in Tunis or Beirut, you would see many people waiting, no order, waiting outside the room, assistants coming in, coming out, no rule, no agenda. Arafat can disappear, come back, tell you, okay, see me at 2 o'clock at night. Nothing to do with regulation, nothing to do with order, with agenda, with allocating authorities and the chain of management. It was there, but Arafat was a chaotic leader. And sometimes he created chaos in purpose in order to show that everyone depends on him. But also because he did not run a state. Now, when he came with these qualities to the PA, he was a failed manager, a failed leader. And therefore, at a stage, the international community and Hosni Mubarak and King Hussein and Jordan and everybody said, you need a prime minister that will make order here. And first he put Abbas, but Abbas left after 3 months. He could not work with Arafat. And then came Salam Fayyad and Abu Ala first. It was a disaster. And Arafat used to have all the authorities in his hand. When the international community said, okay, you must give authorities on security, for instance, to the Minister of Interior and to the head of security services, and you have to allocate power and so on. It has many difficulties with this. And the same happens with Abbas. When Abbas became a president, he made the same problems to his own prime minister. So, and even today, we know that at the stage when the current prime minister, Mohammed Shtayyeh, became popular because of his success combating the pandemic, the COVID-19, Abbas was very unhappy and limited Shtayyeh authorities and so on, and enter in order not to leave the glory only to Shtayyeh. So that's the kind of politics that they play. But also, okay, once again, Israel is not, at present Israel is not the best model for the excellent management regarding the COVID-19. Okay, so we suffer from similar but not to the same degree problems. So there are other countries that are doing much better, but still we have a professional establishment of what Trump calls the deep state. We have deep state. The PA has no deep state. Everyone depends on one person, the leader. In this case, Abbas. Security coordination, it goes directly from the president to the head of the security services and Israel. Civil administration directly from Abbas to the minister in charge of civil administration, civil coordination, civil affairs coordination with Israel. That's the way they work.
You make deep state, and having a deep state sound like something that everybody should have. I'm not sure about that, but there is a question. But I think you already referred to it in your talk. It is about the normalization between Israel and the Emirates and other countries at the moment. This normalization process, and the question is basically how Palestinians are feeling about that. And do they fear a similar normalization process with Saudi Arabia? Could this somehow, I mean, you mentioned it, that the Palestinians have really no idea how to deal with it, have no plan, no strategic idea how to deal with this new situation.
Yeah, it's even the last hour headline, that Morocco will open direct relations or normalization with Israel, direct flights, for instance. It creates the Palestinians feel as being stabbed in their back by the Arab. Okay, I will elaborate a little bit on this. It shows that the Arab peace plan and the Arab League is totally broken. and the Arab peace plan is off the table, because first, there is no Arab consensus, there is no Arab League, there is no one Arab stand. Second, because in the Arab peace plan of 2002, April, end of March, early April, 2002, the last day of March, says that first, peace agreement or Palestinian state, liberation, Palestinian state and peace agreement with Israel, and then following, the consequences will be normalization and full peace with not only with the Arab countries, but also with the Islamic countries. It was, the Arab peace plan was approved also by the Organization of Islamic States. Now it's the other way around. It seems that the Gulf state or the leaders in Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, they know almost nothing about what's going on in Palestine. You can find it, for instance, by the declaration that the Emirates will agrees to import settlement products to the Emirates. Something that the Palestinians struggle for the BDS, to at least on settlements and so on. A subject that is well known to many Western citizens is totally unknown to the Gulf. So the Arab world is broken. The Arab peace plan is broken. This does not lead to the disappearance of the Palestinian problem. And first and foremost, it's an Israeli problem. So the big difference that was made recently with the expansion of settlements and with the Abrahamic Accords is for the big difference is for Israel, not only for Palestine. The Palestinian problem became an Israeli domestic issue. What the Emirates and the Gulf countries, now Morocco, say is very clear. Dear Israelis, we develop with you, we establish with you normal relations, political relations. We don't care about the Palestinians. It's your problem. And actually, once Israel rules the whole area from Jordan to the Mediterranean, as it is since 2002, so the Palestinians are part of the Israeli administration. Israel rules over them indirectly in most cases. Demographically, there is an equality between Jordan and the Mediterranean. So 50% Israeli Jews rule over 50% of Palestinian Arabs. And the Arab world said, it's not our problem anymore. We will have normal relations with the government in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. Now it is the Israeli domestic problem. This is very difficult to the Israelis to acknowledge, that the demography did not change, that the accords with the Bahraini or with Sudan or even with Morocco does not change the demography on the ground. And here we have 50% of the population are non-Jews, non-Israelis, and it is part of the Israeli ruling system. We rule over them. And this is not going to disappear, and the problem is just becoming more acute to the Israelis. It is not important for the outside Arab states. It is still a problem for Egypt and Jordan that border with Israel and Palestine, okay, with Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So for them, it is relevant, but for the rest of the Arab world, it's irrelevant. Now, this will lead, I assume, and we can see it, to Israeli Jewish let's say, more hardline Israeli Jewish ethnocentric policy, because the challenge is from within. It's not from outside the Israeli ruling system, it's from within the Israeli ruling system. And this is a challenge that the Israeli society refuses to acknowledge. So it will come and hit in the face of the Israelis.
There is another question from the audience, from the Zoom audience. Given the movement restrictions and the occupation, how could Palestinians mobilize a substantive mass protest movement across the West Bank? It seems that currently most protests occur at the village municipal level, and it's difficult to mobilize at the national level.
Okay, I write it in the book where I have the documents. I know the story from inside sources. A group of activists in Fatah, also in Fatah leadership, came to Abbas with a strategic plan to organize mass demonstrations, non-violent demonstrations against the Israeli occupation. And he rejected it. For him, non-violence resistance means policy making, only policy making, international policy making, only. Applying to Hague, applying to join different international associations, organizations, voting in the UN institutions, and so on and so forth. Nothing on the ground. He rejected. First, he mistrusts his own people. Second, he does not want to give credit or power to other Fatah senior members that they will succeed mobilizing the masses where he failed. But there is in writing, there is a plan, and the architects of this plan acknowledge that what is needed is a system of what to do when and where, and public education, like the one that was in Midan al-Tahrir in Egypt, in Tahrir Square, where there were many guards keeping non-violence, preventing the masses to use violence. They shouted, "Silmiya, Silmiya," only in peaceful means. So they offered to establish both public education and administration that will deal with these mass demonstrations and manage it. And it was rejected by Abbas. So the idea is not strange to Palestinian activists, but Abbas rejected it for the reasons that I expressed. And here, this is, for instance, a model that can be used. Some items in this plan are dreams only, cannot be implemented. Others can be implemented, but it's first and foremost for the Palestinians to decide that they go for it because they will pay the price. The Israeli tactics is to deteriorate any non-violent demonstration to become violent, because once it is violent, then the Israelis have much better and more trained forces that can overcome the Palestinians. And then the Israelis can describe the Palestinians as terrorists, use violence and wants to kill and so on. The Israeli argument is well known and this is well trained in this way. So the Palestinians must, the plan is to stick to non-violent, as it was the first Intifada in a way or another. But in the first Intifada, it was spontaneous. Here, the idea is to organize it and to build it up. So this is, for instance, a plan that that activists in Fatah, in Tanzim Fatah, brought to the president, because without his approval, it's impossible to go ahead, and he rejected it. To some extent, Hamas used it in the demonstrations, the return demonstrations on the Gaza border. And Hamas acknowledged that there was a very interesting statement made by Yahya Sinwar that according to him, after the return march, the march of the returnees near Gaza border, he said that in this march, we achieved much more than by firing our rockets on Israeli cities and kibbutzim. And actually, this is in the line of the first Intifada, the achievements of the first Intifada.
Okay, any more questions from the audience? On the Q&A? No. Well, I have a very quick last question. Coming back to the issue of leadership. I mean, you describe Abbas as a very pragmatic, moderate. You describe him, and I think that's the picture that has emerged over the years as well to everyone that bothered to look closely. So how do you explain that that this narrative in Israel, there is no partner for peace, on the Palestinian side, it became so powerful even after Arafat died, because it was, in the context of the Second Intifada, you may have thought that it makes sense, or maybe not, but that's a different type of discussion. But the moment that Arafat died and Abbas was the preferred leader, successor also of the Israelis, as you write as well. How do you explain that it really stuck so much in the heads of Israelis that there was such a large consensus about that? Although everything that Abbas has been doing so far was actually to renounce violence, to be pragmatic, to be absolutely against any violence, a struggle, to keep on managing the Palestinian Authority, to continue cooperating with Israel on security, and so on and so forth.
Very interesting. You are right, but it's very interesting question that shows that teaches much on the Israeli psyche, or collective mind, and you can find two contradicting answers, sometimes within the same argument. If you start discussing, you can find your counterpart arguing the two at the same time, moving between. So basically, if I would like to classify the arguments, there are two contradicting explanations or arguments to your question. First, there is no partner. Abbas is not a partner because he is very weak. So yes, he is positive, he wants peace and so on, but he is very weak. The Palestinian people, all of them are, radicals and so on. We cannot trust them. And so his arguments does not represent the true mind of the Palestinians. Okay, this is one type. The other type that you can hear from, in particular from Israeli right-wing people, is no. This is a bluff. He's not a moderate person. He is a very, very radical. First, his demands. So he succeeded misleading the West that he that he is a moderate. He wants right of return. He wants sovereignty over East Jerusalem with Haram al-Sharif. He is radical. Don't fool yourself. He is a radical. There are right-wing people that go even beyond, not just relating to the Palestinian demands in the negotiations, but say, no, he once in the 80s and 70s, 80s, he was Holocaust denier. He wrote this and that during, the 70s or 80s, and they quote some of his PhD document, pages and speeches and so on. So he remains the same person as in the 70s, 80s, and so on. Don't believe him. He is very, very radical, danger, and so on. So there is no partner. So anyway, you cannot argue. They even if you show the person that, okay, he changed his mind, they will say, no, but he's very weak. He's very weak, so we don't have a partner. Now, is there any base to the conclusion that Abbas does not represent the consensus? Yes, more or less yes, because going back, I think 5 or 6 or 7, even perhaps 7 years back, maybe, 2/3 of the Palestinian people want him to resign, mistrust him. So do not support his policy. So he is politically weak. Public opinion is something that changes according to the concept, the context. It's not in vacuum. You cannot preserve it in a container or deep freeze it like the vaccine. Okay, so you take the DHL airplane, bring it, and you have it as it was. Always public opinion, like politics, depends on the context and circumstances. And if Israel expands settlements and the Palestinians see more and more Israeli settlers and soldiers in their cities, or just wake up in the morning, open the shutter and see not in far distance a new settlement and settlers. So for them it's occupation, colonization. So they are against. So much depends on the circumstances. Circumstances can create no partner, can create partner. So much depends on what's going on the ground and how the sides build up their relations. So yes, indeed, Abbas is among the few that still believes that it is possible and the Israelis are a partner. We can make it with them. The others are desperate. Many Palestinians at the moment, I heard it from them. They say, you know what? If our Palestinian state will look like the PA, the Palestinian Authority, we don't want it. We prefer liberal occupation, like East Jerusalem. Give us residency, take all, and forget about. We don't want this kind of the PA to be our state. Okay, so much depends in the context. So is Abbas isolated from his people or different in his way? Yes, Can it be different? Can it change? Of course it can. The same goes for the Israelis, I must say. Israeli society moved to the right. If you look into the public opinion polls published yesterday night, when the new party of Gideon Sa'ar, ex-Likud, was declared, not established, just declared, just on paper, you will see that we have 50 shades of right-wing parties and almost no left-wing. Israeli society moved to the right. It is a process. Can it change? It can change.
Okay, on this happy note, thank you very much, Menachem.
Thank you, Rafaela.
It was a real pleasure to host you. As I said, I hope we will be able to host you in Bologna in person once this COVID madness is over. Again, thank you, and thank you for all participants. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a nice evening.
And you. Bye-bye.
Bye.